8 billion to die over 2 months. A transdoomer meets his former angry alarmist self going south. June 8, 2025. Norwegian language has an idiom about meeting yourself at the door that doesn't translate to any known English expression, but meeting your former self, that is being confronted with a previously held position, is pretty accurate. The idiom exists because you need to take a pause when it happens, or it's shameful or embarrassing, particularly if your older position was communicated far and wide. First, the transdoomer position. Over the course of the past decade or so, I've slowly but steadily arrived at this position, dubbed transdoomer. Linguistically, it applies the same kind of implicit movement as Transylvania, which means the area on the other side of the forest. So what you find beyond the Doomer tram stop is the final stop, Transdoomer. Logically, just like you have to travel through the forest, Sylvam, to get to Transylvania, you also have to traverse through the Doom to get to Transdoomer. And in this way it's only natural to be confronted with doom, be that in your dreams or in the shape of formerly held positions. I also believe it is part of human nature to always retain certain remnants of your former selves, just like there will always be a tiny part of you that is still a child, or a teenager, a student, or young adult. Put simply, the climate transdoomer is a climate optimist. What happens all around us, collapse, is part of the true green transition that our Mother Earth or Gaia had in store for us, and is now rolling out as we speak. It's literally her life-saving backup plan for when everything goes wrong, which everything undeniably is. Sometimes you'll hear transdoomers being reductionistly summarized as choosing nature over humans. I'll show you why this is absurd in our actual context. In a nutshell, the transdoomer position can be expressed as sacrificing civilization for the safe prevailing of the biosphere, or life on Earth. If the deep green trolley problem consisted of switching off civilization, or the biosphere, there's really no choice, even if you monomaniacally only care about humans. Here's why. Civilization is a human system of habitation and practices that feeds on having a living planet around, that is a biosphere. The inhabitants of civilization are humans, who are mammals, and like all other animals, humans need air, water and food. Civilization is therefore impossible without a living biosphere, meaning no humans there can prevail. Biosphere, on the other hand, has been around for 3-4 billion years, and can easily prevail with no civilization. In fact, it has done so for 99.999% of its time on Earth. Even modern humans have been around for 300 plus millennia, before civilization came along. Therefore there's no choosing nature over humans. It's choosing living humans over dead ones, wanting humans to prevail rather than very predictably going extinct. Of course, the ecocentric view is more complete and better than the anthropocentric one. But so far we've shown that even if you monomaniacally only care about humans, you should choose biosphere over civilization, because it's literally the only way for our species to prevail. Luckily then, we don't need to make a false choice between humans and nature. Our interests simply coincide across all species. And not only is there figuratively no choice, because that choice would be easy, there's also no choice presented or present. For as mentioned above, what happens all around us, collapse, is part of the true green transition that our Mother Earth or Gaia had in store for us, and is now rolling out as we speak. She made the choice, or non-choice, as the case may be. She done with civilization. She done with civilization. In contrast, the alarmist position. The alarmist position per definition is one of exaggeration, overdoing, hype, in which the activist hypes up the problem. Because, why not, right? Her activist group wants change, and lying about the problem at hand will bring about the wanted change faster. So their thinking goes. Lying may of course backfire, once other people stop believing the hype. However, in a climate-specific context, and due to its non-linear exponential timelines, I suppose it could be argued that hyping the problem in 1990 may turn out to be exactly accurate in 2000, and perhaps when assessed in 2010 or 2020. Your 1990 statements were actually lowballing the situation, meaning your erstwhile alarmist slogans were painting a rosy picture. You as a rabid young climate activist were actually downplaying the situation, not a hypothetical thought experiment. It's really that bad. Alarmists ring the alarm bell in order to incite people to act, because they quite literally believe action is going to save the day. The very act of ringing the bell separates them from doomers, who deem it too late to act now. Oh, we could act, they say, but it wouldn't change a thing. Not in the grand scheme of things. And we're done doing the action thing just to feel better about ourselves. We see right through that. Not so with the alarmists, they be banging that drum. Even in 2025, can you believe it? So, what happens when a transdoomer meets his former alarmist self? Well, let me first of all state that it's okay, it's perfectly acceptable to be furious at our so-called leaders for lying to us for half a century about the climate, while pretending to have us covered, in effect pretending to have our best interests at heart, while knowingly having so severely broken the social contract between people and government that our world is literally and figuratively falling apart. It's perfectly acceptable to be furious at our so-called leaders for lying to us for half a century about the climate, while pretending to have us covered. While collapse is already rolling out, like thunder, as we write or read these words, and while conceding that said collapse is the best, nay, the only way for our species and others to prevail and go forward, it's perfectly okay to be mad at our leaders for overtly breaking the social contract without telling anyone, while lying to our kids, and while charging everyone extra for their fake green projects and transitions. In fact, it's not only okay, it's the only way to stay sane in this thankfully collapsing world. Alright then, so there we've pretty much laid out how the stoic transdoomer can, and should, still get pretty worked up about our politicians lying to us all the time. All of the freaking time. Alright then, so we've pretty much laid out how the stoic transdoomer can, and should, still get pretty worked up about our politicians lying to us all the time. All of the freaking time. Even when they're talking about the climate, and calling it a problem, they are lying, or perhaps in particular when they do that. 1. They're lying about all the facts on the ground and the severity. 2. They're implicitly saying they care and working hard to fix it. 3. Everything they allude to in terms of countermeasures they're either never going to do, or they'll make matters much worse. And finally 4. Calling it a problem is really the pot calling the kettle black. Overshoot, overpopulation, and making too much of ourselves in too many areas of the planet, areas needed for and by other legitimate species, is the actual problem, and the rapidly changing climate is a key part of its solution. Climate action is floods, droughts, rock and permafrost collapse slides, extreme heatwaves and tsunamis, to name but a few forms it may take. We now walk the Earth in 2025. Future is already here and a quarter century has already passed of the 21st century. We're 1/4 to the proverbial 2100, or about 1/3 of the way if we use 1990 as our base year, like many of their broken promises still do, listening to the rain on my window and the howling wind. As I type this, I'm pondering the 8 billion people who will die over the first 2 months of the bottleneck. How there's really no greater crime imaginable than that, and consequently how absurd it is to even contemplate saying that it's somehow not okay to be angry at the biggest liars in galactic history. My mind goes to various retorts to predictable attack waves, like saying bottlenecks will likely start at different dates, maybe even different years, in different countries and regions, but then what I mentioned will go down over about 2 months. Differing timelines don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I'll worry less about the fact-checking process here than the bottleneck itself. A number of people, I'm scared to guess how many, will likely believe we will go extinct if we lose 8 billion people. Even people who hang out in spaces and groups with human extinction in their names are unaware that even such an extreme event would leave 250 million people, which is in itself more people than the Earth can feed with no civilization and no agriculture. Which doesn't mean I am wrong about the 8 billion. It only means that I didn't exaggerate. Comic relief Q&A. Q, you just want everybody to die. This is my assumption, it is mine, and belongs to me, and I own it. And because I assume this, I won't even bother with asking a question. Hey, boo. Hello, Mrs. Elk. Q, Miss? Hey, hello, Miss Elk. Then I won't even bother with answering it. Suit yourself, Anne. https://extinctionati.substack.com/p/8-billion-to-die-over-2-month will dip into these and related matters in our regular space on X tonight, which you can follow live on YouTube and Rumble.